This is a video that I've wanted to do for a long time. In the beginning, I plan to kind of break a food plot video up into stages, from herbicides to the food and where to plant and things like that. But in a way, I'm glad I didn't, because if anyone would have been actually using some of that advice, they would have found out the same mistakes that I did. And kind of the point of me making these videos is that you guys are able to watch, learn from my mistakes, save some money, and we can all kind of help each other. So I started this plot, and I'll put the map of the property up on the screen, and you can kind of see in the center north side there's a small kind of hidden food plot, and that's what this is here, as well as the plot to the west, and both of those together make up about 3 acres or so. Now, about 3 or 4 weeks before spring green up, which is when all the weeds and everything start to come out of the ground, I sprayed what was called simazine, which is a pre-emergent herbicide. Pre-emergent meaning before the weeds and other things start coming up from the ground. Now, one of the mistakes that I made from there I wanted to share with you guys is an over-application of herbicide. Now, I, like many of you, probably don't and didn't always have the right equipment to get everything done. I used a 4-gallon backpack sprayer, and I tried to do, and I did cover this 3 acres at least twice with the backpack sprayer. However, I didn't get a good application, and with the simazine I just did strips, if you will. Now, when I bought the simazine, it came in a 2.5-gallon jug, and it's fairly expensive. You definitely don't want to waste it by any means, but I kind of got under the impression that everyone had a little bit different of a ratio that they like to mix, and I definitely didn't want to be under that amount, so I might as well go over. And what I ended up doing is keep pouring the 2.5-gallon jug into the 4-gallon sprayer, and I probably would do 12 or so of those backpacks each time that I sprayed the 3 acres. What I ended up learning is, when you divide that up into quarts, it was probably around 7 to 8 quarts per acre. And really, if you're watching Whitetail Habitat Solutions, or you're reading the manufacturer's instructions, things like that, you're going to be 2 to 3 acres depending on how sandy or not sandy your soil is. So that was a huge mistake, and it's kind of funny because, one, I haven't really heard of this problem through many videos on YouTube, and two, when I had Jeff Sturgis here, I know I talked about in my surprise video, we had never really seen this. And so he was calling John Comp from Northwoods Whitetail, where I get my seed, and I know Jeff gets a lot of his seed, and was just kind of going over, because if that's a possibility, if it's the fact that my switchgrass not growing very well in the strips that I put simazine down, it wasn't coming up at all. Was that because of the over application of simazine? And we definitely think that it was. I probably won't even be applying it next year, but regardless, next year it should be fizzled out and kind of worn off by then without a problem. So an over application of herbicide can be a big deal. I had nothing grow in those spots, and you can see here the strips of dirt that just didn't have anything grow. You can see kind of the patches and stuff like that, and it is what it is. No weeds or anything will grow there, but it's not that bad. We still had a bunch of weeds and another cover grow, and I did have some switchgrass come up as well in strips. That actually wasn't too bad, so I'll definitely show you that. You can also see here some of the back perimeters not too well. I don't know if you can see over on this side, but there's some switchgrass mixed in with some of this weed, and my plan was to kind of border the plots with the switchgrass, which a lot of people do. Now, another tip that I'm going to have for you guys when it comes to the food plots is, know your equipment and its limitations. When I came back here, I was carrying 5-gallon jugs of water, my 4-gallon backpack sprayer. I would do that probably 4 or 5 times, get help from buddies or family, bring that back, fill the backpack sprayer up, and do these 3 acres. And that's fine and it can be done, but I just know that I worked very hard on that, and the application of the herbicide, whether it be a pre-emergent or post-emergent, was very spotty. And that's ultimately when I first put seed down in the spring and tried to do a spring planting, it just didn't work because the weeds overtook it, my backpack sprayer, and my application just wasn't strong enough. and it wasn't working very well. So you know, that ultimately resulted into my first fail. Now later here, fast forward into the summer and late summer, early August, you know, I was applying, or even maybe late July, early July, applying my first application with an ATV sprayer. I was fortunate enough to get a 25-gallon ATV sprayer. A lot of you guys probably see them on YouTube. They work a ton better, so much better. Fill that up or have water on the side to be able to fill it up more than once. Like I said, it's 25 gallons. You drive slow over the plots. It ends up getting a nice even coat for the most part, and it worked very well. I did that twice. I did another application, you know, 4 to 6 weeks after that. And then I came in here and I weed whipped. I weed whipped, pretty much sculling the ground to get that as much soil contact and kind of just you know, the dead stuff sticking out of the ground, just destroying that as much as possible to get really good seed to soil contact when I spread. What I also did was build essentially not a disc, but you know, a wood board that I'll show you here. And this board has lag bolts, about 4-inch lag bolts sticking out of it, and it's got a decent amount of wood and a cut up 4x4 and a cable that runs through it that I hook up to the four-wheeler. It didn't stay on too well, but I eventually figured it out. It wasn't too bad. And this kind of scratched up the ground for me and got a little bit more of the weed and the dead grass or thatch, you know, off of the top of that soil. And that kind of helped really open up the seed bed as well. So came in early August, put this brassica seed down here. You know, so it's a mix of the turnips and the kale and things like that. This is John Comp's brassica blend over at Northwoods Whitetail. And it came in very well. You can actually see here in the beginning, the soil isn't quite as sandy, and it really started to germinate pretty much right when you'd expect a good crop to germinate, you know, 5, 7 or so days later. And then you can see towards the back, it's a little bit sandier and it took a little bit longer. Now, right now we're in mid-September, so we still have a few weeks of growth left. So I think the back's going to be just fine. It's going to come through. There's still going to be a lot of green for these deer. On that note, being a lot of green and a lot of food for the deer, the other thing I ended up doing was just shrinking the plot. Instead of doing this full, you know, 3 acres, I ended up just, you know, cutting a little bit off. In the other part, which I'll show you here in a sec, I ended up doing a smaller section. It also is kind of like the back of this. It didn't end up coming through quite as well just because it's sandy, and we also, which rolls into my next tip, didn't have much water coming. You pretty much will hear in every video, you know, you want to put some seed down when you're going to have some nice rain coming in the next day or two. Really get that seed into the soil. And it did say that in the weather, however, it went right into a pretty much 2 to 3 week drought here in Michigan. And it couldn't have been, you know, worse timing. And it basically took 2 to 3 weeks before it even started to germinate on that side. So it was just behind. To kind of recap though, some of my main things here. One, you know, don't over apply your herbicide. Follow the rates, don't be nervous, it will work, just take your time with the application. 2, know your equipment. A backpack sprayer for 3 acres, realistically, you're probably not going to get the best kill unless you spend even more time than I did, and I was pretty exhausted, I'm not going to lie. 3, make sure that you have a rain coming when you're going to go to plant. You're going to want that germination to happen, and if you're worried about it, or you think you need more time, bump the dates up a little bit. You know, get the seed into the ground a little bit earlier. It shouldn't hurt unless it's you know, it's just not prepared well enough for the time. So I think that's pretty much it for this this food plot video. Those were kind of my main things that I wanted to get to you guys. I think we're going to have a great plot here. Also putting down some winter rye today. Tons of videos out there if you search winter rye or winter rye for deer. But it is the last to go away in the winter, and it is the first up in the spring. And it's a great way to have food in the late season, which is kind of hard in these northern states, in Wisconsin, Michigan, states like that. So I'm going to be putting that down around the stand locations. And then also, if you watched that surprise video, you know, Jeff was on the property, so kind of stay tuned for a recap of that, and also how these food plots will be changing. This probably is not going to be a food plot next year, and I'm going to explain why, and you know, give some reasons to the changes that we're making, and I'm pretty excited. I think that the property will be almost a completely new setup and look totally different in the coming year, so I'm super excited about that. If you want to see videos and more, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, give me a like if you don't mind, and we'll see you guys soon.